Welcome to Marketing Monday. Hey, Alex. Happy to be here with you. Alex from Further. Hi,
Super
Alex.
excited. Thanks for having me.
Today we're talking value propositions, which I know as a marketer myself, it's a lot of pressure to get your value proposition right. But then there's a whole other crux to it, which is how do you get the rest of your whole team on board with that value proposition? So we're going to go over that today. We've got an awesome panel of experts for you. And today's show is sponsored by Further, which Alex, you do, Further does all sorts of things, but specifically today, you're sponsoring sorry, I'm losing my words here. You do the pricing assistant. Let's get that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which helps people, that's why the value proposition feeds right into this topic. Because when you're pricing, you want to understand your value and what you're actually pricing and why. So without further ado, let's intro our guests. We have, drumroll please, Eric Varin, Senior Vice President. Hey, Eric, Senior Vice President of Sales at the Aspenwood Company, which manages senior living communities throughout Texas, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And you will notice that we have the entire country covered today, just about. I think we need somebody from the Northeast and we'll be good. Alex, where are you located?
I'm in Las Vegas now.
Las Vegas. Yep. And I'm in Mississippi. So Eric, I'm near you.
Okay.
Jesse Weldon, Executive Vice President of Sales, Marketing, and Research with Primrose Retirement Communities in South Dakota. And she's having the best summer of any of us, I think.
Thank you for having me.
And Tina Shuli Gaut, Business Transformation Consultant with SkyPoint Data, which SkyPoint Data, like Further, does a whole lot of stuff. But Alex, you were telling me about something. Tina, I'll let Alex talk about your company. Yeah, you were telling me about something specific that you're interested in that they do, which is sentiment analysis.
They do they do a lot of great data. I love, we've built quite a relationship with Tina and her team over the last couple of months, and they just do an amazing job and a lot of different data points. Looking at more objective data points to truly understand the market. So I won't steal Tina's thunder, but they're doing some amazing things from a data AI and data collection standpoint.
Awesome, and we may talk a little bit more about what each of you does later in the show, but let's get into it. Let's talk value propositions. Before we start asking our awesome, wonderful guests all of our questions, Alex, you have been in the salesperson's shoes. Tell us what it's like or what the problem that you have seen is when it comes to value propositions.
I think the biggest thing is, for a lot of salespeople, like early on, just truly understanding how do I differentiate? How am I better and different? Obviously, there's the global things, and obviously there's the individual that's in front of you. Every single conversation you're going to have, and every family is going to have different needs and wants and things that are important to them. But I always felt like we struggled to truly understanding, what is our better and different amongst our comp set, and I think it gets more and more difficult to manage as you have more and more competition coming into each market. So markets are maturing. I mean, before, I'll go way back. My very first job, I worked at a CCRC in Chandler, Arizona. It was kind of a blessing and a curse in that the first 3 years of my career, we had 100% occupied community. We had a 6-month wait list. There really wasn't much competition in our market. It was built in a great location. You had a good product. And so we had a wait list. Now, that same market today probably has 10 more competitors. And that was, a good 20 years ago. But today, that same particular market has 10 competitors now that didn't exist before when I was there. So now our customers, our families have more to choose from. And there's been some, just looking at those folks that are on this call, between Primrose and Aspenwood, you're putting some great products together, and they're in your market. How are you gonna differentiate? How are you gonna stand out? I think it's more important than ever before.
Yeah, how are you going to do? And then, gosh, 10 competitors, and how do you find the unique thing about you and get your entire staff on board and make sure that they agree with you, really? Because
exactly. And then from a from a global standpoint, when you're a regional or a vice president or a corporate level, how do you do that, across 32 communities, across 50 communities, and at one point I worked with a company, we had 1,250 communities. So how do you strategically do that and do it well at scale? And that can be a difficult thing to do.
Oh,
so
that's a perfect.
So.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue to Eric. Eric, I see you nodding your head because you have a few. Aspenwood company has a few communities. So how do you get started on developing your value proposition, or what are some things to consider?
Yeah, thank you first of all, thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here. I think the first thing is you have to do your research, right? I think there's so much data available to us now in the world, but making sure we access and understand our market, its demographics, and knowing your competitors. I think not really being able to speak to and analyze what competitors offer in your market, and then understanding what you offer. And one of the things I like to do with my team is I like to have them go to their referral partners and ask them to explain why they refer to our communities or our specific community, so that we really understand if the market understands our differentiator or our value proposition, or if we need to do more work there. Because once you clearly define it, you have to be unapologetically committed to it. One of the things that Aspenwood, we know that we are not for everyone, and we say that to every single person that tours our communities, and we're okay with that. And I think that's different in senior living compared to a lot of different organizations which try to be everything for everybody. But we are a very specific type of product. So we really try to spend time of understanding where we fit, but then really leaning into being unapologetically committed to that, so that we're not, we're not having our buildings or our communities have residents that are not the right fit for us, right? Because there are many competitors in markets. I mean, in Houston, where we're mainly based, we have, I think, 6 communities that compete against ourselves even in Houston. So understanding how each one is different and what they bring to the market is so important.
That's such a good point. And I know in marketing, there's that saying, if you try to speak to everyone, you'll speak to no one. But everybody, I don't care, even outside of senior living, like, every company wants to speak to everybody. You think everybody's your target market. Everybody is. But then you just wash out your message.
It's scary to do it. I mean, for me, it was, that was a directional change when I came here and working with Heather Tussing, and she's believes that this is the right message for us. But to be able to say that to our teams and say, it's okay if you don't close every move-in, they're like, what? But it's about helping them understand how we are the right fit for certain types of potential residents, and we're okay with that.
Absolutely. I'm going to jump in just because I know we're going to get to organizational alignment here shortly. But, the one thing that always came to mind when I was working in communities back in the day, and I did my fair share of selling apartments, which I love. I love meeting the new families, but having a really resident-centric approach and getting that staff input. So you're getting buy-in from not only, beginning by listening to our residents and their families and about what they love about the community and what improvements they might want to see. I think that's very invaluable feedback as well, that we can use to kind of help us, understand what our community's unique value proposition is. And then, I'm ringing the bell for further here, but competitive analysis, as Eric and Alex were talking about, because we do need to have a good idea. We need to take all this data, and there's so much data. I'm a nerd for data. Don't get me started. But we need to do some kind of competitive analysis. And Alex, I'd love to invite you, how do we do a competitive analysis? What data?
I think Tina, you make a great point about data. I think, we'll dive into it, but there's more data than ever before, right? We're in the era of big data. There's so many data options. And if you were to go online right now and go, what kind of data can I get? You could find a million different data points. The point, I think the trick nowadays is to understand which data points to focus on, which ones to prioritize, and which ones actually matter, what matter to your families and matter to our residents. And then, having tools and, having ways and processes of what you do with that data is just as important of knowing where to get the data. And I think everyone's kind of gone to this area where we know we need data, right? I think most organizations are like, yeah, we like to make some data-driven type decisions. And so we're kind of just barely getting there, but then what do you do with it? What do you do with that data? And one of the things I love about, Tina and the team at SkyPoint is they have this amazing sentiment analysis, concept. So it just takes everything that's being said that's online on the reviews, and then not only takes that, but actually helps you understand what is being said about your communities and your competitors in the markets. And I think they have a lot of other data points, but that's something I think is helping to drive, some of the tools that we're delivering to our clients as well. So, but yeah, I also want to say, really cool idea, Eric, about the referral partners. I think that's an amazing data point that you got to capture, because that's how people are talking about you in the market, and they're going to know. So thanks for sharing that one. That's not one that immediately came to mind.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jesse, is this ringing true for you? Is that how you all develop your value proposition?
It is, and I definitely agree with what Eric said about the referral partners, and then your customers, whether it's residents or families. So it's one thing to state your value, but if your customers disagree, then that perception of your value and the reality of it from that lens of your customer are not aligned, and you're just not going to get the results that you want to get from that. So I think the feedback from all of those levels is important. The competitive analysis, the SWOTs, the different reviews. But another key piece of this is making sure your entire leadership team is involved in this. This is an interdepartmental piece. And without that, you're going to be spinning your wheels. So what are the questions that you're asking your teams? Is one thing we ask is a leadership team outside of occupancy, what are you most proud of in the last week, the last month, the last quarter? Is a leadership team outside of occupancy, what keeps you up at night? And I think those questions and those answers speak to your opportunities, and they likely talk about the areas where your value either is or where it's not.
Sorry, go for it, Leigh.
Well, you brought up, Jesse, you brought up leadership, and that is, sometimes things can, you can be trying to develop your value proposition for 6 months because you have so many voices in the room and disagreeing and mincing words and stuff like that. Does anybody on this panel have tips on making the process smooth and easy for everybody involved?
I can start with that. My suggestion would just be one, you have to survey all of your employees, right, at all different levels. I think that employees are customers, so make sure that you're getting their feedback and using it. But if you aren't aligned from a home office support level, there's going to be trouble when you're trying to push that down to the community level, down and back up. The alignment has to start with the messaging that comes from the home office or the corporate team. It just has to.
Mm-hmm. Tina, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to jump on to what Jesse was mentioning. This idea of a shared vision, I think, is so important. Not only having, making sure that everyone on your team, I would say from your operational team to your sales team, but of course, the people who are working on the front lines as well, they need to understand and be on board with our, whatever company, whatever the value proposition might be, which just helps to service, any disconnect that might be happening between what's being sold, because even the people on the front lines, they're the ones delivering the services. They need to be, I would argue, they need to be the most aligned with what we're trying to deliver. And one of the ways to do that is, of course, regular communication, making sure you're meeting, having those all hands calls where you're thinking about how can we be more transparent with our vision and our goals for the organization and what we are trying to sell. Yeah. No one knows it better.
Eric, you have said that when you came on board, that with Aspenwood, you made some different decisions about your value propositions. Have you also faced challenges or overcome a challenge of getting all of the communities and everybody at every level on board and agreeing?
Yeah, I think it's not ever fully easy and seamless, right? But I think buy-in is really important. I think what happened with us at Aspenwood is Heather Tussin came on board, and she was brought on as a change agent for our organization. So everything we're doing here is new and different, and kind of realigning what we do and kind of creating a pseudo new operating company in a lot of ways, because we have a lot of new players. But what we really, it comes from the top, setting that clear cut expectation of this is who we are and this is what we do. And then celebrating the little wins, I think, is also something very, very important to us. I mean, getting down into the communities and celebrating a housekeeper that may go out of their way to do something, or, you know, being able to go with a dining service director who does something special, because I think people need to be reminded of the little wins to continue to have buy-in on what they're trying to demonstrate. Because I think one of the other traps that we get in with senior living, especially in sales, is we like to talk about our value prop. We like to talk about things, but how are you demonstrating it? So instead of just talking about things, what is happening on your tours or with your families that they are experiencing what your differentiators are? You know, perfect example is there's a lot of, well, now that the inflation rate is so crazy, you know, there were a lot of new builds coming to markets, and some of the communities will have, you know, one or two may have long tenure. So instead of you talking about your long tenure, you know, on your tour process, have your team members with long tenure lined up to interact with the tour, so that they're telling that story without you having to be obvious about it. I think helps with those types of things. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent because I'm talking about sales, but I think it's alignment from the top is really important. And then being deliberate again about checking in and seeing where the failures are, where the misalignment is, and then having a plan to strategize and have next steps that you can then celebrate those little wins for, so people then get more bought in, they want to do it more, they then see the results of it, and then you have better alignment. So it's not easy, I will tell you, but you know, with a leadership that, you know, having alignment at the home office, to everyone's point, is really important to kind of set the stage, and then that can trickle down to the communities.
Great points, great ideas. I have one question, and then Alex, I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions that I haven't gotten to. But one thing that we haven't talked about yet is what is a good value proposition? What does that look like? What could you consider? What could you throw in there? And you all are making the point that and Alex has made the point that there's tons of competition out there, and you could all say probably we have the best amenities and we care the most. But, you know, what else could there be? So I want to invite each of you to either share your value proposition, or to share some that you've heard, or some stuff to think about that maybe people wouldn't think about that they could work in. Jesse, would you like to start there? Okay.
Sure. Well, and I think there's an opportunity for the value proposition at a company level might be a little bit higher level than it is in the community, because each community does have a different market, therefore different expectations. But, you know, one community that comes to mind that we have in the Primrose portfolio in Ohio is phenomenal at the experience. The events, every little detail is thought out. So the entire hospitality component is just, they knock it out of the park. And one of the examples I can share from that, they have a leader who is always finding ways to say yes. So his team shared that during the holidays, they wanted to do a live nativity scene. And the leadership team was brainstorming a meeting, and one of the other leaders said, wouldn't it be great if we could find a live camel for this? And instead of brushing it off and moving on, the ED said, well, why can't we? And I'm telling you, there was a live camel at their nativity scene, but that is just one example of finding ways to say yes. And they are known from the referral partners, to the customers, to the families in that market as the community that will give you the best experience possible. So that's just one example that sticks to mind, and they stand out, I would say, in this state, but definitely within that market.
Oh, that's
for us at Aspenwood, you know, when you think about more of the technical side of how do you create a value statement or value prop, there's really two parts, right? There's the headline, which is a simple memorable sentence that your customers can understand. And then there's the subheadline that has 2 to 3 sentences that helps kind of expand on that value. So for us at Aspenwood, our value prop is an experience that exceeds expectations. And then it's our premier communities provide unmatched hospitality, incredible teams, and continuum of care. Although we've earned national recognition, we just want one thing for our residents, the best. So that's our value proposition, because it trickles into every aspect of our business, and that we leveled up or really heightened our expectation of what it is like to live in our community, so that our team members, our frontline associates, our residents, their families, our referral partners, they all understand this is our expectation when you walk into an Aspenwood community.
It's funny. You mentioned also people demonstrating it. And the value prop that you just read sounds almost like a mission statement, and it would be like you could come up with ways to demonstrate that every single day. Yeah, interesting. Tina, you got any tips for developing value propositions?
Ultimately, I think what it comes down to is I think no matter what you might choose, whatever value proposition you might choose, it needs to highlight what Jesse was saying, about community and lifestyle. Maybe it needs to highlight facilities, amenities. But ultimately, like, the question that I want everyone to consider is, why should I choose you? Whether it's the family member, their loved one, the resident themselves who is looking at you. I think if you can come up with something that says, why should I choose you? And I think of, again, I'm a data girl. I think of all the different metrics that you could use, from quality of care to staff. Like our staff are the most well-trained, compassionate, dedicated staff you'll ever meet. They're so dedicated to the well-being of our residents. Maybe it is family engagement, which has been something we've been chatting about today too. Like our facilities are actively, maybe we use certain technologies to make sure that your families are connected more than ever to their loved ones and to their care. And then there's also for facilities and amenities. We're living in an age where I am seeing some incredible luxury senior living continuum of care facilities going up onto the market. And my mind is consistently blown by how beautiful they are. They're incorporating things like fitness centers, gardens, and gourmet dining into their spaces. So thinking of, which of those you want to really consider. But again, getting alignment with your sales and operations and thinking, all right, let's make sure we're cohesively answering that question. Why should I choose you?
That's a great segue. Yeah, Alex, go ahead.
I was going to say, are you going to say, yeah, if you want to segue, you guys got me thinking as you guys were talking. I did this diagram years ago for setting like the value proposition, and and it starts, it's like a pyramid, and I'll share it on LinkedIn later, but I think of it as a pyramid, right? At the very base of the pyramid is what everybody has, right? So dining, care, activities, they have transportation. So, and this is the stuff you see on most websites, I hate to say, right? It's the same stuff. I mean, in fact, you could probably mask it and mask the names and put them clear across, and it all look the same. And when you have a value proposition that's very generic, like we have the best care, we have the, well, if you're going to say you have the best care, that's fine, but can you back it up with a state survey? Can you back it up with some testimonials from families? What's a fact? So, and then we go up the ladder and we go up to like this next level, which is your company's signature programs, right? Like Aspenwood, Eric, you were talking about that. Those are a core, and those can be differentiators, but sometimes they can't be. They're not either. And I use an example. I won't say a name, but I worked for a company and we had a great memory. I thought it was an amazing memory care program. Well, that memory care program was amazing in one part of the country, because of the comp set, but you put that same memory care program in Phoenix, Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, and there's tons of great memory care programs all around it. So is that truly your differentiating anymore? So that changes. And then going up the ladder even more, I say, what's unique? And I think Jesse and everyone touched on this, your people. Your particular, there's no executive director like the one Jesse has, in that market. There's no one like it. That's your differentiator there. That person, that individual. Eric, you mentioned that. Bringing up some of those tenured folks, up there. That's a differentiator that's unique to that market, because there's no replacing that, that housekeeper or that executive director. And then beyond that, it's the experience that we're able to create at each individual community. But, all of that goes back to, none of that happens, like Eric's point, like without alignment, like the housekeeper is not going to feel like, oh yeah, I'm going to go and introduce myself on this tour unless they feel bought in, to it. And that's where that alignment, I always say the first and most important sale to a salesperson is the sales to your team inwards, right? So how can we have built that? But yeah, this all happens, with alignment. And I will say one thing before we transition to the next, the next topic here, is that I would challenge everyone to go into your executive director's office alone. Don't bring a salesperson. And I want you to ask them, what do you feel is the unique, better, and different story here? And then I want you to go out of that office, go to a sales director, and ask the same thing. This would be a very quick test to see if you have alignment at least on the field level. So I'll stop right there.
I got to jump in really quickly to actually bring it back to something you were saying earlier, Jesse, about perception. Like, how are our communities being perceived by the public? Because I think this, and I'm going to steal your words, Alex, because on LinkedIn earlier you said, how do we avoid sales selling the dream? While operations lives the nightmare, right? How can we use perception? Because again, there's all the data is out there. There are ways to get an idea of, how can we set realistic expectations? Because you're exactly right. We are selling, if we were to take away names and put them up on a whiteboard, a lot of things would be pretty cohesive across the board. But how can we, again, set those realistic expectations? While, as Eric was mentioning too, are celebrating the successes, because we want to establish a feedback loop that can, continue to feed the dream sold by sales, and make sure that it's successfully lived out by operations. And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but
yeah.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. I actually, Jada's our awesome producer behind the scenes. Could you throw up that last comment on the screen? Because I think it speaks to, I don't multitask well, so I was just trying to read it while we were talking, but the values and vision of the organization serve as the base of the value proposition and makes the brand uniformed across the board. That's a great point. Values and vision, you can start with that and see if your value proposition matches that. If it doesn't, you might have an issue, right? Another way to do it that we've kind of talked about in a way today is you can get your value proposition from the people how did they see you? How do you stand out to them? What are you hearing from the referrers, from the prospects, from the family members, and from your staff, right? So if you get, the last thing we'll talk about is why you want alignment around this, and we've talked about a little bit about what happens if you don't, and that's if you don't have alignment, and that's that you're selling one thing, and then everybody on the back end is like, but our new members our new move-ins aren't happy because we're not able to deliver what you sold, but we could give this other thing that you could be selling. What happens when you do have alignment around everything? Could y'all speak to that? Eric, it sounds like you have alignment, or at least you've tried to.
We're trying. Well, and I think before I kind of jump into that, I just, I think if a community or a company does not have alignment, I think that it's important to know that change takes time, right? And there's steps to it. So set chunkable goals of what you want to see to define success for whatever initiative you're working on. Because if you're trying to get to the end point, you're probably going to make people frustrated because you're not going to be able to take the time to celebrate it and encourage them. Because listen, every rollout that we've done here, has it been perfect? No. I mean, we rolled out Sherpa in February, and that's a major initiative and changed our methodology to prospect-centered selling. And we have steps forward and we have steps back. But I will tell you that with Heather's leadership, we are a sales-focused organization. So everybody knows that is the expectation from our president. So then it trickles down into how the operators support us, how the caregivers make themselves more available, or the care team is more available for assessments, how our programming is done on a more personalized level. It really has done a nice job of us making sure that we all speak the same language. So if I am in a building and I don't see something, that I can go to the operator, or I can go to someone else, or talk to the executive director and just say, hey, is this in line with our value of what we're trying to do here? And then let them take that in and do with it what they may. But again, I can't go back enough to celebrating the mini wins, because that is how I always say, you use the example of a housekeeper on a tour. I find a lot of times that our frontline associates, they want to be involved in sales. They just either have two things, right? They don't know what to say, or they say too much, and you get in trouble. So when you want their involvement and you want to change where they're not involved, you celebrate them and say, you have this story. I want to celebrate you on this tour. Can you just focus on these two things? And then at stand up the next day, you bring them into stand up and you cheer them and you celebrate them and you give them a gift card and you feature them on your Facebook or whatever it is. You've got to reinforce the behavior to get that change. So
all these communities, Eric and Jesse, they sound like great places to work. So thank you for all that you're doing there. We're coming up on time, and we've had such good conversations today. Jesse and Tina and Alex, I'll give you all the last word here. Jesse, anything else to add today?
The last part I would add is the audio and the video have to match if you're going to align sales and operations. So if your prospect experience looks that much different than your resident experience, start there, figure out why, because those two have to be aligned. They should mirror each other. The customer service, the respect, the experience, they should be very, very similar. So I would say start there and start having the conversations as to why they don't match, if that's an issue in your communities.
Great tip. Thank you.
And, I'll just follow up with my last two tips, which is, one, of course, coming back to the idea of realistic expectations. I'm a sales girl now. Let's be honest, overselling leads to disappointment, and it can really undermine the trust that you're trying to build with your move-in. So keep that in mind. And also, when it comes to delivering too, completely agree. Bring in folks from outside the sales team, because that's how you're going to set appropriate expectations. And so that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Tina. Thank you very much. Alex?
I would just say, just to piggyback on Jesse's comment, I think that is so important that there's alignment and that there's a consistency in what's being said and what's being actually done. Because when there's not, inconsistency breeds mistrust, right? From your families, but also from prospective residents and families. And I would say just this, there's nothing more powerful than having complete alignment between operations, sales, and throughout your organization on your value proposition and what you're about at not only at a corporate level, but at a at the community level, as well. And that flows up and down. And that's not just me, kind of philosophizing, I guess, on that. But this was a big topic when I went through my pricing education. When I went through and trying to learn everything I could about the art and science of pricing, I'm thinking I'm going to learn all these calculus formulas and this and that, and I did. But then it's all for naught. You could have the best strategically priced community dynamic price algorithm pricing software in the world. If you don't have alignment on your value proposition, there's no point, so that's the last I'll say on that. But thank you everyone for joining. It's been a great
point. Yeah, thank you all so very much if you want to find out more about Further, you can go to talkfurther.com, specifically about Alex's pricing assistant. You can go to talkfurther.com/pricing assistant. It's a really cool product, and it can help you develop your value proposition because it helps you figure out where you stand out in your market. So thank you all very, very much. We will see everybody again on the next Marketing Monday. Thanks for joining us. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, thanks.